Good to go.
Thank you. Welcome back to Senate Education. Ms. A. James, could you just give us a high-level overview and answer a couple of our questions on 134?
Sure. Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. S-134 proposes to add a new statute to chapter, oh boy, I went to the end of it. Chapter 72 of the Vermont State Colleges chapter in Title 16 that prohibits the Vermont State Colleges, unless specifically authorized by the General Assembly, from closing or reducing in size or scope the operation of a physical library that was in operation on January 1, and prohibits the reduction in number of positions, employees, or employee hours assigned to the operation or support of a physical library that was in operation on January 1, 2023, below the number of positions, employees, and employee hours in effect on that date. And the effective date of this bill is on passage.
So one question that popped up was the constitutionality question.
Yes, you absolutely do have the authority to tell them whatever you want. This university was, or the state colleges was created through an act of the General Assembly.
Yeah.
You have made many amendments to the things they can and can't do, including in this committee last year, you changed the residency eligibility requirement for new Americans.
Right.
Right? But you just heard a lot of testimony about direction that the legislature gave the Vermont State Colleges in 2021 about improving their fiscal health. And that was very specific language to transform itself into a fully integrated system that achieves financial stability in a responsible and sustainable way in order to meet each of, and then it lists out strategic priorities. So the legislature has set strategic priorities for the Vermont State College system. So I believe you have the authority to do this.
Any questions from Ms. St. James? Yeah.
So if we want to do some of the things that we talked about, we would have to undo some of the things that we've done in previous to this.
It depends on what you want to do. There is currently in the strategic planning fiscal stability mandate, which is in large part reducing a $25 million deficit by $5 million each year over 5 years. I think that's to at the end of the year fiscal 2026. So if what you are proposing to do conflicts with any of this language in any way, then perhaps you would need to make an amendment. I don't believe this language conflicts with the strategic planning language. I'd have to go through it more specifically, but I will note that the strategic planning language is specific that it cannot, the reductions shall be structural in nature and shall not be met by use of one-time funds. So you can change that language.
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging. I mean, like I said earlier, you know, rock in a hard place. We're telling them with the fiscal responsibility mandate, you got to make structural changes. And then they're trying to do that, but they, in my opinion, rolled the process out very poorly, which created so much backlash. And now, you know, we're trying to rightfully do our jobs and, you know, represent the very strong voices that are coming out saying, we don't want this to happen. So I guess I actually don't really know what my comment. I'm just sharing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a good review. Yeah. It's good to know what you're thinking. And I certainly, and I agree. Yeah, we're in a tricky spot. But it was, as to quote one of a colleague, might may or may not want to take credit for it, it's kind of a self-inflicted wound. So based on how they rolled this out.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
How close to insolvency are they that they needed this? I don't want to open up a can of worms now, but that they needed this fiscal responsibility mandate.
Good question. Yeah, you could always have them back in. I think this was, they were just looking for something that they could. Yeah. I don't want to speculate too much, but
I guess I'd like to know, somebody gave them the authority to do what they do, but I'd like to know, obviously, the trustees and the legislature but, you know, specifically, what did we tell them to do and can we do it? Can we cut back on the 25 million in 5 years? To save the college? Is that gonna make it 7 years before they fix it?
So we, the legislature, seem to have fiscal control over state universities, but not much operational control. It seems to be kind of designed that way. Is that a fair way to summarize the relationship between the state board and the legislature, that unless we get involved, that we don't have, we're not involved in operational control?
I don't know that I agree with that. Again, using as an example, I don't know that I would call this fiscal. I think this is more operational. Yeah, this
Well, that's
committee,
exactly right. That's my point.
yeah,
This is operational, whereas in the past,
right. I'm referring to something that this committee passed last year, which was changing in-state residency requirements for the school.
Okay.
Making a, I don't want to say
Course.
carve out, but allowing, let's see, a resident for in-state purposes for determination of residency for tuition to the Community College of Vermont, which is part of the state college system. Person who resides in Vermont shall be considered a resident for in-state tuition purposes if they meet a certain qualifications, and it was essentially new Americans. So you're changing their kind of their admissions, enrollment process, and how they charge tuition there.
okay, but any other precedents in curriculum or facilities or maintenance or?
I don't know. So a lot of session law is vast and deep, right? So the Green Book is an easy place to look, but the language I was talking about in the strategic planning, for example, that's all session law. So there's definitely possible that there have been none or lots or somewhere in between of directives that the legislature has given the state college system over the years that are not in the Green Book. But you know, one of the things that this 2021 language, I'll just call it the financial stability language, the strategic planning language, you know, it required the state college system to maintain campus locations as educational and student support centers, recognizing the overall campus size, governance and operational structures, as well as program and service offerings may change as circumstances require. And there have been several bills over the last couple of years proposing to make changes to the Board of Trustees, which is fully an operational piece. So I don't think I have not come across, and I have not looked at every piece of law that applies to the state colleges, but I have not come across anything that ties your hands. This is a corporation that was created by the General Assembly. There may be political consequences to decisions you make. But
Or industry.
You know, I think you have the power to step in
Yeah, I guess we
there.
can chat. Okay.
Were there any reporting requirements?
Yes. So they have to, and I don't know if this language was amended last year. I will just say that. I'm looking at the original language from the 2021 budget. But there was a reporting requirement on developing a strategic plan for managing fiscal assets that's fiscally sustainable, and that report is due back to the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions and Senate Committee on Institutions. And then there is a report back requirement to you all and your counterparts in the House, as well as the appropriations committees, the annual proposed budget proposal. And then there's pieces within that reporting requirement that are specifically required.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
So that, in that reporting requirement, does that mandate an update to that 5-year, $5 million bogey reduction? I mean, is that part of the reporting process to kind of see how they're doing? Because that could be relevant in this whole?
In the reporting requirement to you all, it asks for enrollment levels. I would suggest, if you, I could walk through this language and confirm that it hasn't been amended. I was not prepared to walk through this
Sure,
language
sure.
today. But if you would find it helpful, we could certainly schedule time to have me come back in and walk through specifically.
I think it's a great idea because it might be an area, I think it's gonna be something that we could always alter what they are reporting on to us if we want additional information that we're not asking for right now. Possibly, just something.
My concern right now is that, you know, whatever they've done is been done. And that going this point forward in the process, that we get the information we need so that we know what their plan is. And they acknowledge that they need to be better at getting the information out.
Yeah.
Uh,
That reporting update sort of process for the legislature could be, okay.
But a collaborative effort definitely would be beneficial right now. At least include the administration, you know, staff and the students in the process. They want to be involved.
I think we'll have to leave it there because we have Ms. Garces as a witness and then we have this one. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And Hayden will be back in touch. If it's easy, you would send us
Yeah, I can send a link to it.
like, I love it if Hayden could just, if it's, is it like 100 pages? Is it?
It's in the big bill, but I can portion
Yeah,
it
just
out.
cut and paste and then we can also have a look at it in front of us when we're here. That's great. Ms. Garces, thanks for joining us. I don't think we're going to need to keep you that long. The overall question for you was based on, we have a bill from Senator Lyons and others having to do with Holocaust education. And I'm feeling a little deja vu here because I think we may have talked about this last year in committee. You are all working on an ethnic studies report back to the legislature, and we don't want to start a simultaneous process where you're kind of coming back, giving us information. So does that help set the table? Do you know where we're going here?
Yes, yes.
Great, thank you.
So for the record, my name, my accent is on. For the record, my name is Amanda Garces. I'm Director of Policy Education Outreach for the Vermont Human Rights Commission and the chair of the Actual Working Group. So yes, we are working, as I presented to you a couple of weeks ago, on the ethnic studies framework. And what that is going to look like is, what we hope is going to look like, is that it will create a framework for all content standards. But like, there's no curriculum. We are not building a curriculum.
Right.
There's not currently any mandated curriculum in the state of Vermont that is a local choice by the districts. So to answer the question, we're not carving out a curriculum that's going to guide school districts to talk about the Holocaust and how to do that.
Or anything, right?
No.
Right.
No, it will, I mean, it will be an overall around ethnic studies
Yeah.
and groups who have been marginalized and how, but it's more, it encompasses a lot of, teachers will be using this to say, okay, how is my classroom inclusive? And it's very tied to education quality standards, which is currently in the state board to be, our recommendations are there.
Would it be safe to assume that we would expect some information about the Holocaust or anti-Semitism and how historically the Jewish people have been treated in your reports?
No, we are not talking specifically
Okay.
about content. Like, we're not talking about, here's how you talk about slavery, here's how you talk about genocide,
Right, no, I
or
understand.
eugenics, anything like that. Again, it's a framework and standard, so it doesn't tie. It ties a little more of some of the concepts of the bill around how do you talk about, well, I shouldn't say anything because we're in the midst of working on it, and anything I tell you, it might not be there. We will be done by May, like we're in the stages where we're looking at a drafting, and then so every week kind of changes. Our final vote for the piece on the frame will be around April 15th. That's when we hope. So all those special sites can bring back to my committee. We have a subcommittee that's working on it, and then our next meeting is, April 15th.
So maybe a better way for me to ask my question is, should we hold on this bill until we see the report?
I think so.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
think we can, yes.
Yep.
And,
We don't want to start something.
I also want to share that when I did reach out to some of the social studies teachers about 5 different districts last night, just to
Oh, thank
say,
you.
what are you thinking about this? Some of the questions that they had were based on, are their school not teaching this? Is this a mandate on the Holocaust alone and not genocide in general, talking about like how that impacts? Agree that the world history curriculum needs to include this, but is there also a mandate on teaching racial slavery and eugenics? These are teachers. Things that they see missing as requirement is the direct relationship between US eugenics and the Nazi ideology, the resistance that some of the groups had while this was happening, the role of our government in the Western countries refusing the Jewish refugees, the 10 stages of genocide and the relationship to ideology, and then that there should be a case study on racism, genocide every year, including Holocaust. And they had a lot of questions about why 6 hours, and that was a little bit out of touch in the way that curriculum is written in districts.
Yeah.
You could check mark by going to a museum one day, right? Like that's something to say, but that's not, is out of reality. So one recommendation that I could put you in touch with these teachers that will be willing to testify and talk to you about that. I am not in the classroom, so, but for our purposes, I think I will bring this back to my community and talk about it.
Great. And we will hold off on the bill at this point until that report is out, so we don't start something that doesn't, we've already done work on, it doesn't conflict.
And I do, reiterating that we don't write curriculum.
Right.
And that's not
Yeah.
building.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Garces at this point?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming all the way in for that.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Your work.
So 5 minutes, Wendy, well, 5-ish minutes, Wendy Koenig and others are gonna come in on S-120. So we'll just take another 5-minute break. And just so everybody knows, unless there's somebody else decides that we wanna move it, we will hold off then. If anybody asks us about S-87, we will wait until this report comes back. So it would be an issue that we would talk about next session. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a
That's
good
the
night.
Holocaust education bill.
Who says
Lions. And, okay,
it? You can tell.
I'm gonna give you-